Hi guys, the pattern I'm going to do today for you is a baitfish pattern. It's called the Fuzzle baitfish. It was one that was developed by Muzz primarily for chasing bream, but has become quite useful for catching salmon. As I said, it's for us around these parts probably most renowned for its salmon catching ability, especially when the salmon are feeding on small bait fish, or eyes as they're called. But I've also heard people catching quite good bream around oyster racks using this particular pattern. There's a couple of variations of the pattern. Some use vinyl rib, which is this clear crazy lace it's called. It's just like a vinyl rib sort of material. I tend to use this Sparkle Flash Maxi braid, which is the tie-well one. This one I'm going to use today is pearl, but I've also tied it using very thin chenille, using the flash chenille that you can get, the smallest size of that. And the reason for that is I don't tie any flash, and the original pattern doesn't have any flash in it in the tail. But I use the Sparkle Flash and dub directly onto the Sparkle Flash, as you'll see. And when it's wet, the fuzzle itself goes fairly translucent, and what you see is this little body of the Sparkle Flash sort of coming through the translucent material. It looks quite good in the water. I have caught salmon on the white and also the tan versions of these, but today I'm just going to tie the white for you. Okay, the hardest part of this pattern is probably just the dubbing if you're not used to dubbing onto anything other than thread. The hook I'm using is a Daiichi 2546. The thread is the mono, the ultrafine mono that I use. You can get it at Big Bob's. I know that because I went and bought some last week. Okay, so with the fuzzle dub, the first thing you want to do is create a tail. So just take the dubbing out, and what you're probably going to have to do is try and get it into a tail and grab another handful until you get a tail, sort of like that. So it's similar to what we did with the polar fiber. As I said, this is a size 4 hook. I would actually normally tie these on a size 8 or a size 6, but I thought I'd do it on a size 4 to make it a little bit easier for you to see as I tie the fly. So the first step, obviously wrap your thread down to the back of the shank and just tie in your tail. Make sure it's on top of the hook, but just tie that in, give it a few wraps. Okay, so there's your tail of the dubbing. Now, because you're only just tying that in at the end fairly loosely, I put head cement on that. You don't want the tail coming out of the fly. When a fish takes it, you want to get at least a few casts in with each fly. Okay, so the next step then is to tie in the sparkle braid, and just tie it in. I usually put it to the front of the hook and then tie it in, and that just gives me a little bit of a base for the body to go around onto, and also ensures that it's not going to come undone in any hurry. Okay, so then take your thread back to the front of the hook. If you've got a rotating vise, I suggest using the rotation arm on your vise for this bit. Just makes it so much easier. Okay, as I said, this is probably the hardest bit if you're not used to dubbing on materials. The good thing about the sparkle braid is it's fairly rough. So when it comes to actually trying to dub onto it, it actually does hold the dubbing quite well. Okay, so the idea now is to, as I said, dub the material straight onto the sparkle braid, like that, and we'll get a bit more and just create a reasonable size dubbing rope out of the sparkle braid. Okay, you want to get it reasonably tight onto the sparkle braid. You don't want it to be too loose, and you'll see why later, because what we've got to try and do is actually tease it out, but we don't want to tease it out too much, and if it's too loose then you're going to tease it out far more than you're probably going to need. So once you've got the rope set, just, you know, as you would with normal dubbing, wind it onto the shank of the hook. Okay, we need a little bit more here. And those of you who haven't dubbed before, it's quite easy. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's just a matter of getting the material between your finger and your thumb and just sort of doing that around the material, and eventually it's just going to hold on to the material. Okay, so we get it up to the eye of the hook. Now, to give the head enough material for the eye to bond onto, I usually wrap it back a couple of times, just like that, and then that's it. Okay, so you've got a little bit more bulk at the head, the eye of the hook, so that you can stick an eye onto it, because you know, if it's just one wrap around there, then you've got very little for an eye to hang on to. Okay, so let's just now tie that off and trim it, and that is pretty much the tying part of this fly. Okay, the next thing to do, so I just got to just whip finish that. Just give it a couple more wraps around there, then whip finish it, and I do use head cement on the head. Yeah, you don't need to epoxy these ones. You can if you wish to epoxy the eyes on. I glue the eyes on because you know, just using the adhesive that's on the stick-on eyes usually is not going to be enough to get the eyes to stick to the material. Okay, so the next step before you put the eyes on is to grab your little Velcro strip. Okay, so that's just the hooks of the Velcro that we usually use for dubbing, and on the top of the fly and underneath the fly, just rough it up with the Velcro. And like I said, you don't want heaps, you don't want a lot of the material, the dubbing to come through. You just want enough to be able to form a bit of a body on the fly. Okay, okay, so that'll do. Now what we do is you pull that back, alright, and you can see there you get a bit of a bait fish profile. And like I said, in the water that material is going to go really translucent, and what you'll see is the sparkle braid through it. Okay, so the next step, and I'm just going to pause for a second to get the materials ready, the glue and stuff, is to put the eyes on, so I'll be back and I'll do that. Okay, so there's the first eye on, and I'll just stick the second eye on the other side. Okay, so just put a bit of glue on him and put the second eye onto the fly. And make sure they're level roughly. Make sure they're level from the front. Okay, right, so there it is. That's pretty much the Fuzzle bait fish. Let me just get this black material here so you can get a better view of it. There you go, and see if I can zoom in a little bit on it. There we are. And just any bits that are hanging down, just cut them off like that. And there you have it. That's the Fuzzle bait fish. And like I said, when that gets wet in the water, you'll really see that sparkle flash coming through the body. But yeah, that's it. Once the glue's dry, you're ready to fish, guys. Any questions or comments, do let me know. Thanks, guys.